The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
It is time for another award-winning Darkside of the Pooch. Oh! Go, Dr. Rab, give it to me. Give me a howl. You can't really howl today, I understand. You have a little one taking a nap, so we won't make you howl too long. How you doing, brother? Everything good? Happy holidays continuing? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's great, man. Just count down to Christmas. I love Christmas.
I got you. What's it like at the Rossbridge Animal Hospital after the holidays? Obviously, you are just absolutely to the gills, I'm imagining, with all kinds of bordered animals over the holidays, people taking some time off, and they're coming back. And then do you just kind of take a deep breath and go, what in the world just happened, like the most of us?
Yeah, we have a lot of, like you said, boarders, and so that leads to a lot of drop-offs. You know, like somebody drops off for boarding, but they need vaccines or they need an exam or, you know, they need something.
Yep.
So sometimes the appointments are a little bit slow because we do have so many people that are out of town. But, you know, some days and some years, both things are going crazy. So when everybody else is taking a breather and they're off work, like holidays and summertime, for us, that's when like we don't take a break.
Yeah.
And then when everybody goes back to work and the holidays are over, that's when we can relax a little bit.
Now, when I take my car into the shop and I get an oil change, inevitably there's something else wrong with my vehicle. They'll find something, whether my tires are rotting out or I need a new air filter or there's something wrong with the brakes or something, right? They're always, you know, you may want to look into this and blah, 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 blah. When you're bordering someone's dog and you see something or smell something or feel something that perhaps is wrong with the dog, despite the fact it's not there for that reason, do you bring that to their attention?
Yeah, you just kind of have to, because that's what they're there. You think that the owners are bringing their pet in for you to examine because they want to be sure that nothing is wrong.
Yeah.
And if there is, then I would think that they would want to know about it. Just like if we go in for our physical, you know, we don't want the doctor to find anything wrong with us.
Yeah.
But if they do, we want to know about it. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but I mean, there are some times where we'll tell an owner that we hear a heart murmur or we feel a lump or, you know, we see or feel something, feel or hear something that is not quite right. And we make recommendations. And, you know, I think we've talked about this on the show before. You know, some people, their pet it's a family member. Yeah. And other people, their pet is just, you know, something that they kind of hang around with and, you know, they gives them a little bit of companionship, but it's not a family, you know, they don't see it as a family member.
Yeah.
So some people want to, if you find something, they want to figure out what it is and they want to go the whole 9 yards. But then there are other people that will say, you know, my pet I have no clue that anything is going on. It's eating, it's drinking, it's jumping, it's running, it's playing. So we don't want to do anything. And that's up to the owner, but it's our job to find, if there is something wrong, to find it and point it out to them.
208-0301, 208-0301, Rossbridge Vet on Twitter. It's Rossbridge Animal Hospital's Dr. Rab Stewart. He joins us every Monday night, 8 o'clock, replays on Monday as well for Dark Side of the Pooch. I want to do a real quick Mutt Mail with Trixie. She was asking, she loves the show. She heard your giraffe story that you gave several weeks ago, and you did that in our first incarnation of this particular show about how you were helping giraffes. Are there animals you don't treat at Rossbridge Animal Hospital? I did reply to her and said, listen, primarily it does dogs and cats, correct? And if people do have pet hedgehogs or pet skunks or snakes or anything else, there's other places to do that, correct?
Yeah. So right now we're pretty limited just to dogs or cats.
Is that a legal thing?
No, it's not. Well, so wildlife, you cannot do any wildlife legally with the kind of license that we have. And that's, when I say we, I mean general practitioners. If you're caught doing, you know, wildlife, then you can lose your license. But I mean, domesticated animals like hedgehogs and ferrets and guinea pigs and hamsters and, you know, I mean, spiders and snakes, those are considered domestic, as long as they are domestic. I mean, of course, you can have a wild snake, you can have a domesticated snake. So
Sure.
anything that's domesticated, we can work on, but we don't really do any exotic work. We mainly do dogs and cats just because that's what we know. And so we stick to what we know.
Okay, so what are you doing if an eagle flies into your window? It appears that it's broken its wing, or it's broken its wing or its neck. I mean, you're not going to leave it. You're going to bring it in, right? I mean, there's got to be some situations where you're allowed to at least care for that animal based on its circumstance, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a wildlife rehabilitation group that's associated with Oak Mountain, and so that's who we refer people to. I just think that there's wild animals, you have to handle them totally different, in a different way than you do with dogs and cats. And if we try to get outside of our boundaries, not only could we do harm to the animal, but the animal could do harm to us. And both of those scenarios are equally bad. So, we rely on the experts for things like that.
Yeah. Hank from Odenville wrote in last week, and this is perfect. It goes along with it. And I want to talk about the Medina spirit story here in just a second. That's why I'm going in this route. Have you ever performed CPR on a dog?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, it's not like it is in people, but you do chest compressions. And you can do mouth to mouth. I've never done that because anytime I need to do CPR, we're in the building where we have oxygen, so we can just hook them up to oxygen and force them to breathe. We can either intubate them or we can put a mask on them. But you do chest compressions, but it's not like in a person, where you take both hands and you put it kind of right below their, right at the point of their chest. And dogs, you lay them on their side and you kind of cup the point of their chest and you just squeeze. That's how you do it in a dog. So yeah, we've fortunately, I don't have to do it often, but I have had to do it before, and unfortunately, I'm sure I'll have to do it again.
So how often have you done that? Because I figured that was something you've had to do in the past, and obviously it works, correct?
Yeah, the thing that works the best though is just certain types of injections like epinephrine.
Yeah.
That starts the heart back. So if we have a dog that has come in and is basically in cardiac arrest, or is dying for one reason or another, then a shot of epinephrine usually will jumpstart the heart, and then at that point we can start doing compressions. And if the epinephrine doesn't work, you can still do compressions, but it's just if you can't get them jump started with that, the chances of you being able to sustain them, number one, and then get them to where their heart is beating on their own is, the chances are pretty much zero. So, fortunately for us, we're just not out in the field. Like when you see this real dramatic thing happen to a person, they try to drop dead at the golf course, or somebody's trying to drown, and they pull them out of a pool and you're doing CPR. That's really just until you get the person to the hospital, and then you don't need any of that stuff anymore. And so since we're already at the quote unquote hospital, we don't do a whole lot of that real dramatic kind of CPR stuff that you would see, on a TV show or a movie.
Yeah. Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, 205-208-0301, Rossbridge Vet on Twitter. This is very interesting. Great interviews. Always give me more questions, and that's why I love talking to you. So what is the most extensive or the strangest surgery that someone, obviously when you're talking about a family member, they've come in, you're like, listen, in most cases I would let the animal perish or I'd let it pass away, but they're like, no, I want you to do whatever it takes to try to keep this animal alive. What would that surgery look like, and how do you prep for that? Do you have bags and lines, and do you have flat lines and numbers, and is it like surgery?
Yeah. So some people, they come in, and so the most common example of this would be anytime we put a pet under anesthesia. It's very safe, and we do that almost every day at our office. And so we have a form that you fill out. It's a release form, And then on the second page, it says, it's basically, it's almost like a DNR. Like, you either check the box of do everything in your power to either revive them or keep them alive, or do not resuscitate. So if they check the box of do everything you possibly can, everything you possibly can is you get all the way down to, if their heart's not beating, then you make an incision on the side of their chest, and you break one of their ribs, and you put your hand in there and you actually squeeze the heart.
Wow.
So, that's the most radical, invasive thing to do. The problem with that is if you have to go to that length, they're probably not going to live. And if you do go to that length, and for some, because it would be most likely miraculous, God would work through you to bring the dog back, which what happens anyway. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you have to go to that length, the odds of the pet living are extremely slim. So then if you go to that length, then you have to fix what you've broken, which can be even harder to do.
Yeah.
You've got to close the chest wall. You have to wire the ribs back together. You have to close the skin. You have to hope that you didn't create an infection, and you have to hope the pet lives. So, that's the most invasive, insane thing that you can do.
Much like a child is to a parent, we're responsible for our children because they can't make those decisions on their own. And I think that way of my dogs. Rainer, my Australian Shepherd the other day, was just blowing me up, wanting to go outside and chase a stick. I threw that stick for like a good 55 minutes to the point where he was coming up the hill and he was, and then he puked. And I'm like, okay, we've had enough of this. And he wanted me to throw the stick again. I've seen dogs run themselves to the point where they've slept for 12 hours after a tennis ball for 3 or 4 hours. He loves it. That's what he loves to do. He loves to do that. And I think about hunting dogs. I think about Iditarod sled dogs. And then I think about the horse racing community with the loss of Medina Spirit, the reigning Kentucky Derby champion that passed away. I didn't realize that dog years are 7-1 for human years. Horse years are 3-1. This was a 3-year-old animal. So really this animal was about the age of a 9-year-old child. And it broke my heart because I'm a horse racing fan. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. First of all, your thoughts on the loss of this animal. And then I want to talk about how we can overdo our animals just because we think they love what they're doing.
Yeah. Horses are some of the most beautiful animals, and watching them do their thing, especially, ones that are as athletic as the horses that compete at that level. It's just really sad. And, it happens a lot. At least the media loves to put it out there a lot. The track that Medina died at in California, in the past few years, they've had a lot of horses die there. Mm-hmm. And I think that the commission did an investigation on why, and I don't know if they have come to all the have finished that or not. So it's definitely concerning, and just really sad, because those are just beautiful animals that that horse was probably not at the peak of its career anymore, obviously. Once you win the Kentucky Derby, usually you get to live out your days making baby horses.
Yeah, you know.
So, it's just really sad. And the whole thing, Bob Baffert is probably the greatest horse trainer in the history of horse racing. If you see a Baffert horse, which a lot of races, there are multiples, but if you're going to put money on one of them, you want to pick his. But then that whole thing with after the Derby this year, how the horse tested positive for a banned substance, and so it's amazing. And they did the same excuse that they have in baseball or football or whatever. Oh, it was a substance that we didn't realize would cause a positive test. I just don't believe that for a second, number one, because you're telling me that you have a horse that is worth millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, and you don't know exactly what is going on or in its body. And the same thing goes for an athlete. I don't think anyone buys that. Professional athlete. I can't imagine that the people that compete at that high of a level don't know exactly what they're doing. So this whole thing is just really sad, really disappointing. And I'm not surprised by it, because when you have, when the stakes are high and somebody stands to make a lot of money, whether it's on a horse or whether it's a professional athlete, things like this are going to happen because everyone's looking for an edge, and they don't care how they get it, and they don't care what it's going to do to their body.
Yeah.
And the horse has no say, obviously.
Yeah. And that's the part that it's heart wrenching. Betamethasone, of course, was the banned substance. It's not illegal to give horses your betamethasone. They just can't test positive on race day. And this horse did. Right. And obviously this horse is still the Kentucky Derby winner until they go through the proper protocol in order to give it to the second place horse. If in fact that happens, and Bob Everett's been suspended from Churchill Downs, his home track and one of his favorite tracks, for the next 2 years because of that. I constantly hear, and again, I'll make the analogy with parents and kids, that we make our kids go travel ball. Our kid loves it. He loves being a travel ball. Does he really love being gone every Saturday and Sunday and not being able to play with his friends and his grade suffering and this, that, and the other? We talk about breeding animals. We bred animals to hunt. We bred them to run. We can make an argument we bred them to fight. There are roosters that are bred, expressly, unfortunately, illegally, but they're bred to fight. And these animals don't know what right and wrong is because they're being bred for those particular things. When you see animals that are being bred to be, and listen, we've used animals our entire lives, and you can certainly say we would not have won wars without horses. Horses got us through many a war in this country. It breaks my heart to see that humans are responsible for what some animals go through. When you see the Iditarod and you see these sled dogs, hell yeah, they want to make their owner happy. And they look excited, they bark, they wag their tail, and I'm like, you're going to run 173 miles over the next 3 days, and you can tell me those dogs like that. Your thoughts on that, because I'm sure you see all types of different dogs.
Yeah, well, the main thing that we see is I've never treated a sled dog. I don't really know anything at all about sled racing. So, I don't really know how those dogs are kept and all that sort of stuff, but we see a good amount of hunting dogs at my practice.
You see greyhounds?
The only greyhounds that we see are ones that have been retired from the track.
Yeah. And what are they like?
They're great. Greyhounds are, fantastic. It's a fantastic breed of dog. The ones that, and you don't see a lot of them. It's not an incredibly common breed. I've never seen a mean one.
Yeah.
They're just the sweetest, gentlest, coolest dogs. We sit, there are Italian greyhounds too. Those are, much smaller than the standard greyhounds, but, they're great dogs, and they have some idiosyncrasies as far as like from a medical standpoint. Their natural red blood cell count is different. So if you saw if you saw a greyhound's blood work, it would look out of whack, compared to other breeds. So they do have their medical idiosyncrasies, but they're awesome dogs.
What's your thoughts on, how do you know when your dog has had enough of its play? Because obviously as an owner, it's going to continue to run. I've seen guys throw tennis balls into their swimming pool for hours, and the dog will continue to jump off the diving board. Is there a time, or will the dog let you know I've had enough?
Most of the time they'll let you know they've had enough. They'll stop. And if if you're taking your dog for a run, it'll stop. And when it stops, it's ready to be done. But the other thing that you mentioned, so throwing up is it's a common sign that the dog might be overheating or is having enough. And so if you see something like that, you stop. And it's just so amazing that people do that too. People exercise and they run and they work out until they're so nauseous they throw up. But it's not very often, and it's amazing that a dog can love something so much that their body has told them to quit. I don't know how long ago, but they don't, and they work so hard that they throw up. And so when you see that, it's not your fault. It's not it's nobody's fault. But yeah, that's a good sign that it's probably time to stop too.
As an animal lover, and I love animals as well, and based on Medina spirit, and it takes a champion. And again, the equivalent of a 9-year-old child passing away from a heart attack just doesn't seem natural to me. And they're doing a necropsy on this particular horse. They say there's a 50% chance that the necropsy will actually tell them what exactly happened. I thought that was really interesting in the article as well. Well, 50% of the time it kind of tells us everything, and 50% of the time it doesn't. I get this feeling it's going to be the 50%. It's going to be the latter, where it doesn't tell us why this horse particularly had a heart attack. As a pet owner and as a veterinarian, what are your thoughts on what horse racing needs to do to protect these animals? Because this is not, I think on average, 6 horses a day pass away in this country.
Yeah. And, I wish I had the answer. I don't know that anybody really does, because things like this can happen, unfortunately. It's not common, but a lot of times I'll equate animals and humans. But you hear of these basketball players, and I hear about it more with basketball players. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the nature of basketball or if it's just the physique of these super tall guys. Maybe they're just predisposed to having cardiovascular problems.
Yeah.
But every so often you hear about it. One of these basketball players is just running down the court and they just have a terrible cardiac catastrophic event and they just die. So, I mean, it's gonna happen to the horses too. I don't know if you can step up the testing of the banned substances. I think that just like anything else, and I'm talking way, way out of my pay grade here. Like, I'm speculating,
yeah.
But you would, unfortunately, the cynic in me tells me that probably a lot of these horses and these trainers and the people who do the drug testing, they're probably all in bed together. You would think, one hand kind of helps the other. So I don't know, maybe you could get a more, a different third party in there, that doesn't have, a horse in the race, I guess, pun intended, to maybe do thorough exams and thorough testing. But yeah, it's a sad thing.
All right, before we get into some Mutt Mail, he's Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Rossbridge Vet on Twitter. Their phone number 205-208-0301. All the Kurre pets, for as long as I've known him, I will follow him wherever he goes. He's the best at Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Dr. Rab Stewart. This story I sent you a couple days ago about a woman who got reprimanded for breastfeeding on a Delta flight. No problem with breastfeeding on an airplane, but she was breastfeeding her hairless cat. We talked about that on the Kurre and Claypo show. Obviously, I'm trying to think, and you're a veterinarian, so I'm thinking maybe there's a pure answer to this particular case, why a woman would be breastfeeding her hairless cat on a Delta flight. And Josh is like, no, she's just crazy. And I'm like, well, let's talk to the professional first. Maybe there's a reason why you'd want to breastfeed a hairless cat on a Delta airline. You have any answers?
No, I side with Dr. Clay.
Damn it, I was hoping you'd have a great answer. I was hoping you'd say, yes, I've had one of my customers actually come in, and this is something she does on a weekly basis. Would there be any, and it sounded like the cat didn't want to have any of it.
No, the cat's screaming on the airplane. Oh, like I could make something up and tell you that hairless cats have a deficiency.
Yes, go.
And some sort of mineral that is only found in human breast milk. Yeah, we could, we could edit this. Let's rewind it and I'll just make something up. No one's going to fact check me.
So since we're talking about it, hairless cat, what the hell is it? Are they common? I've seen one myself. They're not particularly attractive, but I know that hairless cat fans love their hairless cat. What's up with that cat? Why doesn't it have hair? And are there any other animals like it in the world?
Oh yeah. I love them. I think they're, I think of Austin Powers,
Yeah.
When you remember that Dr. Evil had one.
Yeah.
We also had, when I was in school, we had a radiologist and she loved them. Like she had like a whole army of them at her house. And I think that they're personally, I think they're really cool. I've never owned one. But there's other hairless pets too. Other than the Sphinx, there's a Mexican hairless dog, which I mean, maybe I just have this thing for pets that have no hair. I think they're really cool. Chinese crested, if you ever seen a Chinese crested.
Oh yeah.
Dog? Yeah.
So,
I think they're cool.
Why don't they have hair? Is it something they just don't grow? What is it? What is it?
It's just breeding. I mean, at some point down the line, these cats they had less and less hair, and so they just kept breeding these cats, and that's what you get.
Yeah.
Just like any other breed, like poodles, for example. At some point they had, way back when, they had a dog that had really kinky hair, and they had another dog that was like that too, and so they bred them together, and that's what you get.
My director of programming is cracking up. He's looking at pictures of hairless cats right now, and they're hideous. I mean, you have to love ugly. I'm just trying to figure out why someone eventually wanted to breed a hairless cat. Why would you want to take that fur away from that little guy?
I don't know, but it definitely. I've heard people say that if Satan has a pet, this is what it is.
Yeah.
But there's other hairless breeds too. I don't know them all, but the Sphinx is not the only one. There's more. But I don't know, like the older I get, like I'm kind of getting hairless too.
Yeah, I hear you.
So maybe that's why I like these things, because I'm starting to look like them.
It would be great not to have to shave for just a couple of days, right? That would be a beautiful thing. Dr. Rab Stewart joins us here from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. Their number is always 205-208-0301, getting ready for the holidays. By the way, our next show, we're going to get into psychopathy of cats and are cats psychopathic. We'll talk about that coming up on our next show for next Monday night at 8 o'clock. So make sure you listen up if you're a cat owner. I think you'll understand and you'll go, wow, I always thought my cat was a little off kilter, and now there's a real possibility that's true. We do have time for one piece of Mutt Mail. Tim from Hueytown writes, my son constantly blows in my dog's ears. He loves the fact that the ear kind of wiggles a little bit whenever you blow in a dog's ear. Is that okay for a dog to be blown in the ear constantly?
Yeah, sure. Just don't, no licking and no spitting in the ear, which I know that his son would not do that, I'm sure. But yeah, blowing is fine. But if a lot of moisture gets down in the ear canal, and I'm not, I'm talking enough moisture like that goes with a bath, or if your dog stays out in the rain for a long time, because that can lead to ear infections. The moisture just stays in there, and it's dark, it's warm. If it stays wet, it's a good habitat for yeast and bacteria to grow. But yeah, what's going on there is fine, no problem.
And that's just a standard ear infection for a dog. That's what you normally see when a dog comes in and he's scratching his ear and he's making that low growl sound.
Yeah, and it's not like I tell people all the time, it's not like a human ear infection like the kids get, a deep inner ear infection where they're running a fever and they have a snotty nose and that sort of thing. When dogs get an ear infection, it's most similar to when people get swimmer's ear. Yeah. It's an itchy ear. It feels like there's water, in there. So that's what it's mostly like, but it is a bacterial and a yeast infection, but it's not deep inside the inner ear. It's in the outer ear canal or sometimes the middle ear. It can get into the inner ear, but it's not as common, and the symptoms are totally different. But tell is it Jamie? Is it Jamie, your programs director?
Yes,
Okay. So before we're done, if he's having a good time looking up Sphinx cats, he needs to look up the Donskoy.
The Don what? He's on with us. Go ahead.
Donskoy. Look up the Donskoy, because that thing looks like you bought a Thanksgiving turkey and you stuck a cat's head on it.
What do you think there, Jamie?
Okay, I got it right here. Like. I got it right here. Here you go, Tony. Take a look at this with me.
Okay. Oh, Lord.
Oh.
that is a pretty amazing animal. That's crazy. All right, tell
So
people
it's
how.
not just the Sphinx. There's lots of hairless cats.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Stewart. I do appreciate you.
tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can reach us on the phone, 208-0301. You can email us, rossbridgeanimalhospital@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. So whatever your preferred mode of communication is, you can send us a telegraph or a pigeon or whatever.
All right, as always, we love to keep our leg up in the competition, if you know what I mean there. Dr. Rab Stewart, thank you so much. We'll talk next week.
All right, man. Talk to you
Peace.
soon.